I hope you're ready, because this is the biggest news to drop for the Android emulation scene in years. We finally have a free PS2 emulator that has good performance across a large range of processors, and in this video, I'm going to do a deep dive into what is now possible on the platform. Before that, I have a few things that I want to cover. AetherSX2 is a free PS2 emulator for Android based on an LGPL licensed emulator for the PC. It is currently in alpha, but beta testing will start in a few weeks over on the Google Play App Store. At this time, Snapdragon processors have the best compatibility with the freedom to use either Vulkan or OpenGL depending on the game. Despite this, even MTK processors that have powerful CPUs and a weaker GPU can still provide comparable performance with OpenGL alone. As a general rule, you are going to want a few Cortex A75 cores or better to have a good experience with this emulator. As of the making of this video, AetherSX2 is currently the best PS2 emulator on Android, and in this video, you will see why. I shouldn't have to say this, but I do want to add a reminder here to be kind to the developers of this app. Do not harass them if something isn't perfect on your phone. This team could have easily made this into a paid app if they wanted to, but they aren't doing this for money. Also, do not ask for the alpha build featured in this video because I will not give it out. I promise the wait for the beta release will be worth it when you finally get it. There is also the small possibility that the name of this app could change in the future, as another PS2 emulator on Android has resorted to stealing trademarks with the money that they've made from their app to push out free competition from app stores instead of investing in making their garbage emulator better. I just feel like you guys should know that there's a lot of shady nonsense that the AetherSX2 team has had to deal with to get this free app out there for everyone to use. For this showcase, I tried to select a large range of devices to demonstrate what this emulator is capable of. For Snapdragon processors, I'm using an 845 in the ROG Phone, an 860 in the Poco X3 Pro, an 870 in the Axon 35G, and a 888 Plus in the Red Magic 6S Pro. To showcase Mali GPU performance, I have a D900 in the Oppo Reno 6 and a D700 in the Poco M3 Pro. And finally, to showcase Power VR GPU performance, I have a T310 tablet. To make sense of much of the footage that you're about to see, I need to do a brief primer on FPS in this emulator. There are many options that you can change to improve performance on games that do not run at full speed with the default settings, with the biggest one being underclocking. You have two options available to you with this emulator. The first is to adjust the EE cycle rate. When you set this rate to a negative value, the PS2's processor takes longer to process blocks, which effectively reduces the clock speed. In combination with this, you can set the EE cycle skip rate to a positive value. This is going to make the Emotion Engine process fewer cycles per frame, which means that it will send less work to the VU. Using this option can reduce the frame rate if the system doesn't finish drawing what it needs to during the 60 Hz window, but it can also improve performance in some situations. When you use these two options, you really have two outcomes. The first is that the game will feel like it is running at full speed. If this is the case, you can enjoy the added performance. The opposite of this is that the game will feel sluggish. You can combat this by uncapping the FPS, but this also comes with an interesting problem with the current build. There are situations where a game requires underclocking to run well, and in those situations, it is possible for a weaker phone to perform better than a more powerful one because it cannot run as fast with the FPS uncapped. This unique issue won't be a problem when we can set custom FPS caps to fine-tune performance on a game-by-game level. No matter which group you find yourself in, underclocking makes the displayed FPS essentially meaningless. You have to judge the performance based on how the game feels. Underclocking can cause graphical issues, decrease sound quality, abnormal frame pacing, and can break parts of games. Just be aware that more powerful phones can run games without the need for an underclock. To illustrate what this looks like in practice, I have Ratchet & Clank running on the D900. You can see that the FPS is floating around 40. At least for this clip, the FPS reading is an accurate representation of how this game is running. You could play the game like this if you wanted to, but it is not ideal. If we underclock this processor, we would fall into the aforementioned group B, so we need to also uncap the FPS. The game runs a bit too fast in this situation, but I would argue that it is the better of the two options, at least at this point. In some situations, uncapping the FPS can come down to personal preference. In this case, I have Crash Bandicoot running on the T310. With just underclocking, the game is highly playable, but it feels a bit sluggish to me, so I uncap the FPS. Now it runs a bit too fast, but situations like this won't exist when we can set custom capped FPS in the future. This is a much longer video than I'd usually put out on this channel, but I wanted to give everyone a clear understanding of what this emulator is capable of. There are many gaming handhelds out there now that can use this emulator that I could have used in this video, but I wanted to keep the focus on the emulator itself, so I chose to only use phones and tablets in this video. In a future video, I'll go over more about the app itself and show how to set things up. In this first section, we're taking a look at the performance of the T310 CPU and a PowerVR GPU. In this section, we're looking at the performance of a D700 in the Poco M3 Pro. This phone has a decent CPU, but a rather lackluster GPU. As you'll see, it still has the ability to use this emulator. From the D700, we move to the more powerful D900. This has a much stronger CPU than the D700 as well as a better GPU. This is a good example of mid-range MTK performance with this emulator.
Excuse me.
These must be the Galactic Rangers.
Press circle to fire your shock blaster. Try using the nitro launcher against that vehicle.
Now it's time to showcase the performance of Snapdragon processors, starting out first with the Snapdragon 845 with the original ROG Phone.
Press circle to fire your shock blaster. Try using the nitro launcher against that vehicle. To select weapons, hold triangle and select an icon with the left analog stick. Hold L1 to precisely target your weapon.
This is a smaller section, but for the Snapdragon 860, we have the Poco X3 Pro.
To select weapons, hold triangle and select an icon with the left analog stick. Hold L1 to precisely target your weapon.
At least when it comes to Snapdragon, the 870 is really where we have enough power to tackle a large variety of games. In this section, we're looking at the performance of the Axon 5G from ZTE.
We need to...
Snake. Huh? What was that? just my imagination.
Press circle to fire your shock blaster. Try using the nitro launcher against that vehicle. To select weapons, hold triangle and select an icon with the left analog stick. Hold L1 to precisely target your weapon.
In this final section, we're looking at Snapdragon's best chip on the market today. Here is the Red Magic 6S Pro with the Snapdragon 888 Plus.
Onward, men! Show no mercy! Fearsome is the survival instinct of a wild animal. Very well. Just act human and make sure that you do not disgrace our name.
Go before your comrades perish.
Look for a place.
I hope you enjoyed this showcase of the AetherSX2 emulator. It was a lot of work to put together this video and even more for the developer to make this app. Please show your support for this work wherever you can. If there's something that you'd like to see in a follow-up video, let me know down below. Happy gaming everyone. Taki out.